Today's topic is do not miss the Sasana boat. Okay, I chose this topic because I think it's very important for us to appreciate what the Buddha thought. Sometimes we take it for granted. We are Buddhists, and if we don't practice in this life, then we will miss the boat. Because the Dhamma is there at this moment, okay, because there are still people practicing. Before we go on, let's take a look at some statistics first. Okay, this is the Buddhist population at the moment. There are about 535 million Buddhists in the world, which is only about 7 to 8% of the world population. So Buddhism is not the most popular religion in the world. The most popular is still Christianity. Second is Islam. Third is Hinduism. Buddhism is only fourth. And it's only form about 78% of the world population. Now amongst the Buddhists, China has the most number of Buddhists. China, they have Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism is very popular because it's the big vehicle. Okay, they have a lot of practice in compassion, all this, and the temples are big, huge. Then you have other countries like Thailand, Myanmar, all these are Theravada Buddhist countries. Thailand has 66 million. So even though China has the most number of Buddhists, but it is not a major religion. It's only 18% of the population. Whereas in Thailand, it's 93%, Myanmar is 80%. So these are Buddhist countries. Sri Lanka is also a Buddhist country. Japan is only 33%. Vietnam 16%. South Korea 22%. Malaysia 16% only. Okay. So you're one of the 16%. Now, how did Buddhism spread? Buddhism started in India, not in China. A lot of people think that the Buddha came from China. So Buddhism started from India, and it spread first to Sri Lanka. From Sri Lanka, it spreads to Myanmar and Thailand, and down to the south, Malaysia, Indonesia. Okay. And on the other side, Buddhism went up north to Pakistan, Afghanistan, then to China through the Silk Road, and later to Japan, Korea, and to the Cambodian countries. So you find that Buddhism is popular mainly in the East. Right? Those days in the West, you don't hear about Buddhism. It's only recently that you see a lot of Western monks practicing and setting up Buddhist monasteries in the West. So we are very lucky we are staying in Asia. So the advent of the Buddha. Okay. The Buddha actually does not come in every time. The last Buddha that appeared was about 2,600 years ago. That was around 600 BC. And to become a Buddha is not easy. It's not a one lifetime work, but an evolution of man towards enlightenment. So before our Prince Siddhartha, right, our present Buddha, called Uttama Buddha, became enlightened, he has to go through a lot of practice. First, he has to make a vow in front of a living Buddha. That means what we call, he make a vow in front of Buddha Dipankara, who lived many, many millions years ago. Okay? And after he was confirmed by Buddha Dipankara that one day he will become a Sammasambuddha, okay? He is known as a Bodhisattva. That means a Buddha to be. So he practiced the perfections for millions of life, okay? Until his last birth into Sita heaven. Then he chose an appropriate time to be born in India, okay, to fulfill his last life as a Bodhisattva. So, historically, the Buddha was born in the forest, and he renounced his princely life at the age of 29. He lived in the forest as a wandering ascetic and attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree at the age of 35. He taught the Dhamma for 45 years and passed away at 80 in the forest as well, under the sal tree. The Buddha established the Sangha to preserve the Dhamma Vinaya. And the Buddha has these three special qualities of compassion, purity, and wisdom. So now, if you look at the Buddha, actually there are three types of Buddha. One is the Sammasambuddha, right, whom our Uttama Buddha is. Now, Sammasambuddha is a fully enlightened one with wisdom. Okay? And it's a Sammasambuddha that established the triple gem. Okay? Just now you took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Okay? You take refuge in the Buddha, the teacher, the Dhamma, the teaching, and the Sangha, the order of the noble disciples of the Buddha. Right? So only a Sammasambuddha can establish that. Because without the Sangha, you find that the teaching will not last. Right? Because the Sangha is the one who practice and attain to the stage of Arya, noble stage. Right? From there, they can continue to teach others. Right? And today, the Sangha is actually the oldest institution. It has survived 2,600 years. Right? So Sammasambuddha is a fully enlightened one with full wisdom, and he can establish a full Sangha. Whereas there's another type of Buddha called Pacheka Buddha, or silent Buddha. So some people, they practice and they become enlightened. But they don't have this skill of teaching. Okay? And because of that, they don't have a set of followers who can continue with their teachings. So they are called silent Buddha. But of course, you can still learn from silent Buddha through their examples and so on, or through direct conversation with them. The other type of Buddha is called a Savaka Buddha. A Savaka Buddha is sometimes called an Arahant. If you now listen to the Buddha's teaching, you practice and you become enlightened, then you are called an Arahant or a Savaka Buddha. So these are three types of Buddha. But here I'm talking about Sammasambuddha, okay, which can establish a Sangha. So when was the Sangha established? Okay? The Sangha was established after the Buddha gave the first sermon. Remember, the first sermon was given to the 5 ascetics. And after he finished his first sermon, the youngest, okay, Kondanya, he attained to the first stage of sainthood. Right? So the first stage of sainthood means he is already in Arya, or noble one. So that is the day where the Sangha is established, the Arya Sangha is established. So when we take refuge in the Sangha, we are actually taking refuge in the Arya Sangha. So the Buddha was born as a man, okay, and he lived and passed away as an extraordinary man. He's not a Superman, okay, but extraordinary. That means he has special qualities. Okay? Now, if you look at the Buddhist time frame, you call it Kapa. A Kapa is a long period of time. There are certain time period where there are no Buddhas, right? And there are certain period you have one, certain period you have two, certain period you have three, right? So in the present period, we have 5 Buddhas. This is the last one, the Bandar Kapa, we have 5 Buddhas. And Gautama Buddha is the 4th one. So there's one more Buddha coming before the destruction of the universe. So under this Kapa, after a certain period of time, the world will be destroyed. Okay? And then there will be the Dark Ages. Okay? So, to give you an idea what is a Kapa, you imagine you have an empty cube of 16 miles, okay, width, length, and height. And every 100 years you put a mustard seed. The mustard seed is very small. And every 100 years you put a mustard seed. One Kapa is when all the cube, the whole cube is filled with mustard seed. Or you have a 16 by 16 miles rock. And every year, every 100 years, an angel will come and wipe using a silk cloth. And after that, when it's worn off, then it's 1 Kapa. So that's how long time frame can be. So in this present cycle, you have 3 Buddhas before the Gautama Buddha. Buddha Kakusanda, Buddha Konagamana, Buddha Kassapa, Buddha Gautama, and Buddha Maitreya. Maitreya will be the next Buddha. After this dispensation has disappeared. Okay? The Buddha will not arise, the Sammasamma Buddha will not arise if there is still the teachings around. Okay? Only when the teaching has disappeared. So, how did the Buddha's teachings disseminate? So what the Buddha discovered is actually universal law, or truth or reality. The Dhamma exists even without the Buddha. But you need the Buddha to discover it. Just like, law of gravity. Gravity is always there. But you need Isaac Newton to come around and discover it. He made experiments and then he gave you the law of gravity. It was discovered more than 2,500 years ago. And after the Buddha passed away, his disciples, in those days you don't have recordings, right? You don't have books, you don't have internet. So the only way to transmit the teaching is through oral tradition. Right? So remembering is very important. Okay. So what the monks have discovered, have learned, they remember. Right? And after the Buddha passed away, there were already disagreement among the disciples, the Buddha didn't teach this, or the Buddha taught this. So there was already some discussion on what the Buddha taught and what the Buddha did not teach. So, Venerable Mahakassapa, one of the senior monks, he convened a council and he called in 500 Arahants. Only Arahants, Those who are not Arahants are not invited. And they recite the Dhamma. Okay. And luckily you got Ananda. Ananda has photographic memory. And actually before he became the attendant of the Buddha, he gave one condition to the Buddha, that if the Buddha teach and he's not around, the Buddha has to repeat the sermon to him. Well, I thought that is a good condition given. So because of that, Ananda can actually recollect many of the suttas. So you have 500 monks chanting. 1 or 2 monks chant differently. So that one is discarded. Okay? So that's how they preserve the teaching. Okay? Of course, as time goes on, there's dilution, addition, and so on. And 100 years later, there was another council convened. And the third council, 236 years later, was actually under the patronage of King Asoka. So under King Asoka, because once the religion has royal patronage, okay, then it can become very popular. Because if the king is a Buddhist, and he encourage his citizens to practice, then the religion will flourish. So during Asoka's time, okay, Buddhism flourished. And Asoka actually sent his son to Sri Lanka. Asoka's son is a monk, and he was sent to Sri Lanka to establish the Sangha. That's how Buddhism spread to Sri Lanka. And later they sent missionaries to Burma and Thailand. The teachings were only recorded around 80 BC. So all these recordings are all collected in a tree basket. They call it tree basket. The Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka. Yes, and this compilation is about 11 times the size of the Bible. That's why you don't see Buddhists carrying our holy scriptures around. It's too massive. But nowadays you can find this in the net. You don't have to carry around. So as I said earlier, the Sangha is very important, okay, in preserving the teachings of the Buddha. Okay? And the Sangha is there for us as a refuge, refuge in noble order. It gives us great, they are considered the great disciples of the Buddha, or Arhants, and we seek refuge from within. So when we think of the Sangha, we think of the noble qualities of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Okay? These are the 5 spiritual qualities of the Sangha. So these are the qualities of the Sangha when they have attained to the Arya stage. The first stage, they have removed wrong views, skeptical doubts, attachment to rites and rituals. And once you have reached that stage, you only have 7 more lives to go. Okay, within 7 lives, you will be enlightened. The second stage is Sakadagami, reduce craving from sensual pleasure, ill will, and you have 1 more life to go. The third one is Anagami, never returner, remove craving from sensual pleasure and ill will. And finally, if you become an Arahant, you remove all craving from beautiful formation, craving from formation, pride, resistance, and ignorance. So our practice should be to attain at least to the first stage of sainthood. Then you're safe. As long as you have not reached the first stage of sainthood, there is still a chance for you to fall down to the lower realms. And once you fall down to the lower realm, it's not easy to rise up to the higher realms. So it's important for us to understand this first, and appreciate the Dhamma. The types of people during the Buddha's time, and even now, okay, we categorize Buddhists under 4 categories: bhikkhus, the monks, bhikkhunis, nuns, upasaka, the laymen, and upasika, laywomen. So these are 4 categories of followers of the Buddha. Right? Either you are a layman or a sangha. Right? Of course, if you want to attain enlightenment faster, then you become a monk or a nun, right? Because you got more time to practice. As lay people, you have your career, you have your work to do, you have your family to take care of. Probably you can still practice, right? But you have less time and more things to enjoy. Okay. Now, in the Theravada tradition, the monks practice 227 precepts, the nuns 331. Okay? So sometimes you aspire to be a monk or a nun, but then it's not easy. There's so many precepts to observe, right? And if you're not ready, then you will suffer as a monk or a nun. Okay? So the practice is again a gradual process. Okay? You cannot say you want to jump straight into monkhood or nunhood. Novice monks take only 10 precepts. Okay? And lay people 5 or 8. Right? Sometimes lay people even complain about 5. I can't take the 5 precepts. Right? So we have to take it a step at a time. But there's a danger if you don't practice. Okay? One day, there's an end of the Buddha dispensation. And when signs like that happen, then there is signs of deterioration. For example, attainment. If less and less people become noble ones, then the thing has deteriorated. Method. People have forgotten about the method. People stop learning. Symbols are destroyed. Relics. That's why you have pagodas, to house relics or this. But some of these, as time goes on, they are all destroyed. So now let us reflect on our own life. Rare is a birth as a human. Hard is the life of mortals. Hard is the hearing of the sublime truth. Rare is the appearance of the Buddha. Okay? So as I mentioned earlier, it's very rare to have a Buddha, to meet a Buddha, to meet a living Buddha. Because after many, many kapas only, you have a Buddha appearing. And it's also hard to listen to the Dhamma. Not everybody has the inclination to want to listen to the Dhamma. Okay? Today you come because you have the wisdom to come. A lot of people, you ask them to come to a temple, they say, no, I got something else to do. They got more things on their plate. But we have to see that our human existence is a gift to us. Our mind can be developed. The Buddha says, as a manusa or human, your mind can develop. You have the opportunity for spiritual growth to develop the mind. Can experience happiness and suffering. You have limitless potential for enlightenment. Like what I said earlier, the Buddha was born as a man, lived as a man. But he died as an extraordinary man because he became enlightened. So the same can happen to us, We are born as a man. We have the potential to be enlightened. Compared to animals, humans have food, shelter, freedom from predators. Animals create many negative karma. Humans can do both. Right? So we have a choice as humans. We have the intelligence either to perform good or bad karma. You can understand the existence of present and future lives. Because human beings plan for the future. Animals don't plan. Animals, they live one day at a time. It's a survival of the fittest. Whatever they can eat, they eat. Understand that this life is short and considered welfare for the future life. Create causes for the next life. So what the Buddha taught is quite simple, okay? In most of his teachings, he will say, you create causes. You want happiness, you create causes for your happiness. You want suffering, you create causes for your suffering. Right? But again, the human mind is that even though you don't want the suffering, but people continue to create causes for suffering. Okay. And also that as humans, you have a chance to practice Dana, Sila, Bhavana. And also, finally, to develop the wish to escape from samsara. So as humans, we have this potential. And according to the Mangala Sutta, okay, if you live in a suitable locality with fruits of past good actions, hearing the Dhamma frequently, practice generosity, associating with the wise, honoring those who are worthy of order. These are indeed blessings. Right? So all of you have great blessing. Right? You live near Bandar Uttama Buddhist Society. It's a suitable locality. Okay, you have a lot of merits, and that's why you come here. Okay? Somebody introduced you to this place. You hear the Dhamma frequently. Every Sunday you come and listen to the Dhamma. You practice generosity. Okay? Now we have our food fair, you can practice some generosity. Associating with the wise. Okay? That means you have spiritual friends with you. You have the Sangha to support your practice. And we also invite monks so you can honor those who are worthy of honor. So there are so many things to practice. So now the important thing is how do we practice? Okay, we can practice in a way that there are actually 5 paths that most people will do. Okay, the first path is the path to hell. Okay, second one is a path to animal realm. The third one is a path to a realm of hungry ghosts. So these are the lower realm. Okay? If you're not careful, then we will perform actions that will lead us to this. Okay? And these paths are associated with unwholesome actions like killing and stealing. Okay? That's why the first thing that you are taught, okay, is to observe the 5 precepts. If you don't observe the 5 precepts, you are actually leading towards these 3 paths: killing and stealing. Right? So, all this killing and stealing is associated with greed, hatred, delusion. Right? Even sexual misconduct, lying, and also taking intoxicants. Okay. So the first thing that Buddha teach, okay, is the 5 precepts. So this morning you took the 3 refuges. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. That is there's a definition of a Buddhist. Okay, as a Buddhist, I take the Buddha as my teacher, the Dhamma as my teaching, and the Sangha as my guide. Okay. So these 3 things will make you a Buddhist. But to be a good Buddhist, right, you observe the 5 precepts. Right? You can take refuge, but after that you break the precept. Right? So you're not a good Buddhist. Okay? So at least when you take the 5 precepts, you avoid the 3 lower realms. So the other path is the path to human existence, followed by the path to heavenly realm. And these 2 paths are associated with wholesome actions such as generosity, morality, and tranquility, and vipassana meditation. Okay. So Dana, Sila, Bhavana. You practice Dana, Sila, Bhavana, you have these merits with you to bring you to the next birth at least as a human being or in the higher Deva realm. Of course, the sixth one is the path to liberation, is the Noble Eightfold Path, which leads to Nibbana. So it's the Buddha that showed us this way. Right? The Buddha has discovered this Noble Eightfold Path for us to follow, so that we are not caught even in the first 5 realm. Okay? Whether we are in a higher realm or lower realm. Even if you are born as a heavenly being, it's not permanent. You will still come back after a few hundred years or million years. So how to escape from the cycle of this samsara? So one night, while the Buddha was staying in a Jetavana grove in Savatthi, a Brahma named Rupa Brahma came to him at midnight and asked a question. Lord Buddha, how did you cross the ocean of samsara with its endless waves of suffering? The Buddha replied, I crossed without moving, without being still. So Rupa Brahma was puzzled by and asked for clarification. The Brahma had approached the Buddha with some pride, thinking he already understood the Buddha's teaching and only needed to know the method of crossing. The Buddha explained, if I were to remain still, I would sink. If I were to move, I would be swept away. Therefore, I cross neither by moving nor by being still. Oh, this is very deep, isn't it? So Rupa Brahma then let go of his pride and humbling, asked for a deeper explanation. The Buddha elaborated, in crossing the ocean of samsara, if one remains still, they are overwhelmed by defilements. If one moves, they are carried away by worldly attachments. Thus, crossing is accomplished by neither moving nor remaining still, by practicing the middle way to attain Nibbana. So upon hearing this, the Rupa Brahma understood and attained the first stage of enlightenment, Sotapanna. So do you understand this? If you have understood, then you have attained the first stage. In essence, being still symbolizes indulgence in defilements such as greed, hatred, and delusion, while moving symbolizes engaging in actions driven by worldly desires. By practicing the middle way to attain Nibbana, free from both extremes, leads to Nibbana. So some of you may understand. If you're a meditator, you understand. Okay, let me give you an example. If the mind is filled with defilements like greed, hatred, and delusion, or jealousy, one is still and will sink into the 4 lower realm. So the first 3 path to a lower realm is caused by greed, hatred, and delusion. Performing good deeds with the expectation of worldly rewards like wealth, status, or rebirth in heavenly realm equates to moving and will result in being carried away into human, heavenly, or Brahma realms continuously revolving in samsara. So this second one leads you to wealth, leads you to human birth, leads you to heavenly birth, but it's still not the end. You're still in samsara, you're still revolving in samsara. So one is staying still, one is moving. Because when the mind moves, it's always because of what? Sensuality. Right? Our mind is always moved by sensuality, by our 5 senses. Whatever we see, we like. Right? We want it. When you want it, if there's craving, when there's craving, there's a clinging or attachment. When there's attachment, there's becoming. Okay? So there's no end. So to cross by neither moving or being still is to perform good deeds with the aspiration for the Nibbana alone, without worldly desires. Right? So even when you do a good deed, okay, you aspire for enlightenment rather than aspire for a better birth. Okay? You aspire for a better birth means you are still in the cycle of birth and death. When hatred or attachment arises, recognize that staying still will cause you to sink, while moving with worldly desires will cause you to be swept away. The practice of middle way requires constant mindfulness and the aspiration for liberation. By following the Buddha's guidance, we avoid both extreme and progress towards Nibbana. That's the reason why the Buddha left the palace. Because when he was a prince, he has all the enjoyment that he has. And he finds that it is not leading him towards enlightenment. And then after he became an ascetic, he actually practiced a lot of ascetic practice by torturing the body, hoping that he will become enlightened. So he found that that is also not the answer. Okay? So he dropped these two and followed the middle path. So this is how our mind works, you see. From ignorance, okay, it gives rise to fabrication, mental fabrication. And it gives rise to consciousness, name and form, six sense spheres, contact, feeling, craving, attachment, becoming, birth, aging, death, and after that, ignorance again. Yeah. So how do you break this link? As long as we are in this link, we go round and round and round. Okay. So we need something. Okay. Another way of saying the boat in the Sasana is our body. Who is the boat? Our boat is a body, right? We are born with a body. So our body is a boat. Right? And to travel across the ocean of samsara, we need provision. Now, what are our provision? In order for you to practice, you need what? Merits. Merits are your provision. Yeah, your four requisites. You need food, right? You need shelter. You need clothing. You need medicine. So with our body and our merits, okay, we can practice. Right? But again, along the way, if you sail through the ocean, you may not have enough water. Okay, there's a lot of sea water, but you don't have fresh water to drink. So how? You got your body, you got your merits, your provision, but you don't have water. Okay, so you got to use your mind, right, to transform salt water into fresh water. So the analogy of this is to use your mindfulness, okay, and discernment, okay, to overcome your defilements. Then that is equivalent to getting fresh water. It's like you are distilling the water from saltish water to fresh water so that you can drink. Right? So the body alone will help us to practice. Without the body, you can't practice. Right? Without merits, you can't practice. Because if you don't have the condition to practice, you cannot practice. Right? People who have to work on Sunday, they can't even come here to listen to Dhamma talk. So they don't know enough merits. Right? So you must have enough merits. And even with the merits, you need to practice mindfulness and discernment or wisdom, satipanya, right? To be able to transform your mind so that you know what is good for you, what is not good for you. So this is one way of interpreting, okay, how we go through the samsara. Okay? So all of us are in the same boat. Okay, we are sailing together. Maybe Babs is a bigger boat, where people can come together, get together, and study the Dhamma, and also practice together. And also we have the opportunity to meet good teachers. So this is something that we must not waste the opportunity. When monks come, it is good for us to come and offer dana, okay, because this is our provision, it's our merits. It's good for us to practice morality, our precepts well, okay, so that we have enough good merits. And also, don't forget about bhavana, okay, to train the mind, okay, so that you can overcome your defilements. So remaining still signifies succumbing to defilements. Moving signifies being driven by worldly desires. So this is a very important verse, okay? Not by moving or becoming still. Okay? Some people think that they are still, they are enlightened. No. Okay? So when we reach the other shore, okay, we don't need the boat anymore. Okay? The Buddha gave an analogy that the raft is like a Dhamma. Okay? You use the raft, you use the Dhamma to sail across the other shore. But once you reach the other shore, you can let go of the raft. So practicing with aim on Nibbana alone is the middle way of non-attachment. Thus, the Buddha preferred the middle way of non-attachment. This approach is not difficult. It requires performing good deeds with the goal of Nibbana. Throughout samsara, we have often sunk or been swept away. Now it's time to follow the path of non-attachment to safely cross samsara. So I hope I've given you an idea of what is samsara, okay, who is the Buddha, and what the Buddha has taught, okay, and how we can use this human assistance, right, to cross this ocean of samsara. Because this body is very important. Without this body, you cannot practice. Right? The Buddha said, mindfulness of the body is as important as mindfulness of the mind. Right? So at the end of the day, you practice to develop the wisdom, okay? The wisdom of knowing which direction you want to go. You can choose the path of the lower realm. Of course, given a choice, we don't. Okay, you can choose the path to the higher realm. But ultimately, the best path is the path shown by the Buddha, which is the Noble Eightfold Path, which will lead us to final liberation.